I have no idea what that Christmas thing was all about. Hey guys, welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. This is Pete Bickford. I'm your host on the very, very well produced live stream that we all grown to know and love so much. I believe this is episode number 135, and it's the most random episode we'll probably ever have. I'm back from a ton of travel and things like that. And so I'm counting on y'all to make this make sense by asking questions. Please post them to @ComicBaseTV in the chat, and I will try to hit as many of those as possible. And other than a whole bunch of announcements and a few questions people sent me recently over email and whatnot, that's the show. So I need you guys to make this interesting. So please post anything you'd like answered, and I will try to hit it as much as possible. So anyway, and I'll also warn you that I'm kind of tired and sleep deprived, so this could get stranger than average. So, well, let's take that for what it's worth. And by the way, if you like this sort of thing, please like and subscribe, melee that notification button, and we'll take it all from there. I want to say hi to some folks. Thank you for showing up. Richard Scott, first in the house, man. Fred Slota, aloha as usual. Brian Price here out in Denton, Texas. Oh, and thunderstorms. Yeah, well, I'll have something to say about that in a minute. Tim Kilbreath, welcome from Beloit. Mike Beam, Vancouver, Washington in the house. Our mod, of course, Greg Hecht is around here. It looks like everyone's getting weather. Andre from up in Canada, and Kenneth B, welcome from Detroit. Ed Billiot, Richmond, Jerry Fox, other guys from Tennessee, and other Ed from Canada. Anyway, guys, welcome all. So I'm going to do the ComicBase news first off in things, and then we'll take it from there. So there's a build 3023. It's a little tiny tweak build. You don't need it if you don't want to, but it does fix one reported bug, which was if you were doing an item breakdown under collection statistics and trying to list all your regular issues. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but if you did want to do that, it used to have a bug, and now it doesn't have a bug, and that is the sole change in 3023. Now, that's on the program end of things. As we mentioned before on the last show, we've really switched gears. We're working on the next major release of ComicBase right now, so a lot of things going on that track. And if you'd like to join us, please send a note to pbickford@human-computing.com if you'd like to join the it's not even the beta program, it's like the dev program. Basically be in on our interior Slack, get access to release builds, and help us kind of build and test the thing as we go. If you'd like to be a part of that, please send me a note, pbickford@human-computing.com, and I'll get you added. If you do that, please also note what your ComicBase user ID is and which edition of ComicBase you're using, because I'll hook you up with an equivalent edition of the next thing as we go about with testing. All right, other things going on. There is going to be a big, like one for the ages, content update coming out this week. Now, is it going to add a million new items? No, it is not. But it is going to make, if you have artist, writer, and so forth corrections turned on, it's going to make something in the area of 2 million corrections in the database. And those are everything from standardizing a ton of artist, writer names, not all of them, there's still more to go, but also going for, if you have newspapers as part of your database, you'll see well over 1 million corrections just in that alone. We standardized all the volume and issue number formatting on those. Those will automatically get filled in and scrubbed down and so forth. So when you download this week's update, expect to take a little longer than usual to run. It's still, despite the sheer number of corrections, you're still talking probably 10-15 minutes to process the whole thing. But if it's not the usual 2 or 3 minutes on your machine, if you've got a new machine, this is why, because we're making a lot of changes. So look for that one. The guys over in editorial are working on that one right now. Probably be out tonight. I haven't got any notes saying it's going to be delayed, so expect that one as you go. All right, other things going on here. Let's see here. Yes, ComicBase After Dark are kind of like behind the scenes speakeasy. Grab a beer and say what's on your mind, hangout time show. That one we're thinking next Thursday. that work for you guys? Thinking around 8 o'clock Central. If that's a good or a bad time, please, once again, pbickford@human-computing.com. Let me know if you're interested in being on the show, because that is the kind of show it is where we all get together and just chat, hang out. Um, you can lurk in the background if you like, but if you want to be part of the active discussion, let me know. I will send you a live stream link on that one, and just send me a link. Thinking next Thursday at 8. But if I'm open to opinions as to whether or not you need to, if that's a good day, bad day, and different for folks. But just send me a tickle or whatever the heck the kids call it these days, and we'll take it from there. All right, other things going on. I'm heading out to Comic Con. I'm so used to saying we are heading out to Comic Con. No, it's not the whole crew. It's just me. I'll be going out to that one in about 3 weeks out in San Diego. Please, I'll be there as a civilian, but please, if you see me in the hall, feel free to come and say hi. I'd love to chat with folks and just check in with folks. It's always great to chat, and I'm looking forward to seeing San Diego for the first time in God, it looks like 5 years since I've been back there, and it's been a long time. I'm looking forward to it a lot. All right. So a little bit of news of just on a personal nature of what I've been up to lately. So last Thursday, rewind the calendar, six mere days, and I'm getting ready to go on a business trip. So I thought I'm going to leave myself with an easy day on Thursday, and need to give my mom some help on some computer issues. She said, "Come on over. We'll grab some coffee. We'll hang out. I'll deal with stuff as it goes." And sorted through a lot of kind of like mom tech support issues. If you guys have ever had a relative or a spouse or whatever else that hits you up for tech support, that kind of deal all day long, get so forth. And then at a certain point during the day, the apocalypse came. It's just the sky turned black, and suddenly we went from like pretty clear skies to just it was derechos. It was absolutely psychotic stuff, brain thunder, the whole nine yards. And just moments earlier, I'd been pointing out on to our generator and saying, well, power's only been out once in 7 years that we've been here. So, but if we need it, I've got a generator over there in case things get ugly. And about, an hour after having said that, things got very ugly indeed. And if you guys were trying to use the system on Thursday, you might have seen the odd bit of system outage, but ironically, not that much, because right after the power got cut and, trees were felled and transformers blown, yes, that generator was indeed powering all of ComicBase, all the servers and everything else for several hours until everything was restored. We had very, very high winds hit through. I got to show you all some pictures because this is nuts. So this is my backyard right afterwards. This, um, all of these were healthy trees right beforehand, and then they just weren't. Anyway, so the really fun part, though, well, I mean that was fun enough, and I expended basically two chainsaws where like they ran until they didn't want to run anymore. One was an electric, which I used for little stuff around the place, and the other one was a big gas powered guy, which was running for a while, and then just decided no, I've been pulled out in a long enough time that I'm going to turn my gas to varnish and I'll start stalling out on you, and so that thing's going to get its carburetor rebuilt, and I'll have to keep on with the sawing, but I'm going to be at this for a while. Neighbors had a tree absolutely snapped in half. It was just absolute craziness. But anyway, so when the whole thing had blown over, went out to the driveway and it's like, hey mom, you feeling calm, sitting down, because we should look at your car. And ironically, my wife had taken off for an appointment right beforehand, and there was like a major part of a tree slammed down into right where her car had been parked. And I was like, dodge the bullet, because if she was still there, she'd be missing part of her car. And my mom would come over, and if you guys know the South, it's everyone parks on people's lawns around here, because as they are so fond of saying, your tree ain't allergic to I'm sorry, your car ain't allergic to grass. Which coming from California is something we never did to other people's driveways, but out here, that's the normal way of overflow parking. Because one thing they don't do is they also don't build shoulders on roads, so you don't park out on the street like you would out in California. Um, but anyway, so she was parked out on my lawn, in the shade of a tree who was now missing a big part of itself, which had fallen down. But on the other hand of her was another part of that same tree which had fallen on the other side of her, and I was thinking, "Wow, look at this! You've totally dodged the bullet," because you got half of a tree on one side, you got half a tree on the other side. As far as I could tell, your car is untouched. And then we got a note afterwards after, everyone had kind of calmed down from everything and she'd gotten home and looked at it. I was like, "Oh yeah, actually looks like it dinged the freaking hell out of her back door." And so she's got that to deal with on her car that she just bought like last week. So yeah, that was good time. So and anyway, so that's what I did on Thursday. And then after that, I got in the car at like 4 in the morning and I drove out to Heroes Con out in Charlotte. And so that was fun. HeroesCon was a good time. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Had 3 days at the show there, and then I had to go visit friends out in Virginia who were having some things they needed some help with, and dealt with that a little faster than I thought I would. We actually wrapped up business on that by 6 o'clock on Sunday, and then I drove 9.5 hours from Sunday until about 3 in the morning to get back here for work on Monday. So that's my week. And if I seem spacey, this is why. Because ever since then, the world has conspired to make sure that I never actually get the sleep I was missing. So anyway, that's what I've been up to. Um, let's see. Oh, and Greg points out if we've got a wood burning fireplace, looks like you're set for firewood for a bit. Oh man, you have no idea. We actually there's a lot of trees on the property. Well, there were a lot of trees on the property, and there are less now. But we pulled out a couple over the years, and and usually when you haul, you're pulling out 60, 70-year-old trees. The tree guy takes away most of it. But I said, we've got a fire pit. Leave some of a couple of trees around, and they left rather more around than we thought. And it took us 4 or 5 years really to burn through all the firewood from when we first came out and pulled down a tree that had fallen in the front yard and some other stuff like that. Because it was one of these ginormous, under the spreading chestnut tree kind of things. It was occupying the whole front quarter of the property. That when that thing went down, it was like it left firewood for like the next millennia. My wife and I were just sitting out there like maybe 3 weeks ago saying, "Well, I can't believe it. It took 5 years, but I think we've maybe got 2 more fire pits left, and then we're out of wood. What are we gonna do? Buy wood like, city people?" You know, and my problems are solved. I I'm not going to have this problem for the foreseeable future. And, yes, I'm saying my wood my birthday is coming up, and if, anyone wants to get me something, log splitter, I'm gonna say it's a thing. Alright. So, let's see what else is going on here. Do 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 do. All right, so looks like people are generally in favor of Thursday for the Comic Base After Dark. So let's roll with it. Okay, moving on. All right, so let's talk about other. Oh, and yeah, and I already whined about. We'll also need to be clearing out the carburetor on the big chainsaw to get through some of the big work. Which, I've never, replaced a carburetor, so I guess that's something to learn. So I guess that's what we're doing. Okay. Anyway, so a little bit of notes about Heroes Con because it was neat. I gotta say, I've never been to Heroes Con. I've always wanted to. It was one of those shows when we were first, since when we first were doing Comic Base. And you're kind of looking around all of the nation and say, what are all the big shows? Which ones make any kind of sense? For whatever reason, I think it might have been conflict scheduling with other things, but we never managed to make Heroes. And I think especially back in the day, pre-internet, especially, it would have been worth doing. Um, as most of you guys know, comic shows over the years have gotten increasingly to not be comic shows. The San Diego, in particular, went from, it was at least 3/4 of being comics when we started. The odd T-shirt vendor and some action figures and things like that when we start. And by the last time I was there 5 years ago, I'm going to say if 20% of the show had anything to do with comic books, that would be a minor miracle. Probably not. Um, but completely flipped the numbers around over the years because Hollywood became bigger and bigger and bigger, and comic books really became a fading part of the overall mix. I mean, the show itself got to be huge. I mean, it spilled out into the city, and it to the part where, like, it was taking place in about 5 other buildings, as well as out in half of the Gaslamp district, like, in some of the biggest years. But that had everything to do with selling movie and TV properties to a youthful demographic, or geek culture and things like that. Very little to do with selling 32-page funny books to people. And in the middle of all this, we were doing long form demos of database software, and that got to be an increasingly weird mix. And so after, I think, 23 years of exhibiting at Comic-Con, we made the very painful decision, I think 6 or 7 years ago, to not display anymore, which then broke the streak. And I went back once, I think, as a civilian, might have been twice. I gotta say, when you do these shows, it's definitely different being on the inside rather than the outside. But it's been a number of years. I mean, COVID and everything else conspired to kind of keep me away for the time. So I'm looking forward to getting back there. That saying, Charlotte, just want to show one picture just because I just dug it. I didn't take any pictures from the show itself. Don't know why, but this is a little park right across from the convention center, which actually it's beautiful. There's these bronze sculptures on either side that's dedicated to reading. It's picture, it's these giant sculptures of books, and in the middle of this park is just a crossroads from everywhere. Charlotte is just a neat town. I've never been, and I'm really happy that events conspired to get me out there. It's one of these towns. It has a vibe of, I'm gonna say, a bit like Nashville crossed with San Diego. Is probably about as close as I can get there in terms of, it's got a lot going on. They're building like crazy. It's clearly a town that's on the move, but it's also one that there's lots of neat things going on pretty much everywhere you look. Everything from apocalyptic themed escape rooms to crazy antique malls and street fairs. Really, really good breweries around town. I did my best to drink my way through the beer menu over at Wooden Robot Brewing. Yes, it's called Wooden Robot. I mean, because I knew that there was one within walking distance. You knew I was going to be there. Um, and some really really good stuff there. But so the town was great, and then the show itself also, again, an actual comic show. Probably the deadest areas in the entire show, the only ones that weren't doing business, where they had, I believe, 4 different auction houses set up, with kind of like the dudes in the suits, there to inspire confidence. So when you're selling your very large collection, you would feel good doing business with them. They were not doing bank business most of the time. I'm sure they did some business, but I think they had, I want to say they had Heritage, Hakes, Comic Connect, and the other one's eluding me right now. But I think I counted 4 of those. They had CBCS and CGC were both doing grading services. Also didn't seem particularly busy, but man, were people selling books. Everything from some serious golden age stuff I saw moving around, and lots and lots and lots of actual just regular old comic books trading hands. I picked up a number of things myself. The artist alley was very well attended. Some good names in there. I got a chance to chat with Mike Grell. A number of other artists, were like, half my questions on them were like, okay, so Mr. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, for the record, officially are the accents, or Jose Marzan Jr. It's like, all right, I see sometimes you use the accent over the second A, sometimes you don't. Just, it's like, for the record, because we're doing the big cleanup right now, how do you prefer to be listed? Which is one of the weirder lines you're ever going to have if you talk to an artist at a show. I don't recommend it. But anyway, good folks. Gonna show just a couple things that just for fun, and then let's move on. So and this one is just really showing my local heritage. The very first thing I bought at the entire show, there was a small press person who had just written a mini comic ode to Bucky's, and I'm like, sold. Yeah, hook me up with one. Not a great comic, but yeah, someone wrote an entire mini comic about visiting Bucky's for the first time. Which, if you haven't visited Bucky's, you will know immediately. Um, uh, Met Bill Morrison again, one of the guys I hang out with. Always seemed like we were, seeing each other during setup during Comic Con. Picked up a lovely omnibus edition of Sims Treehouse of Horror. Hit up pretty much anyone who had a Kickstarter project going. Um, it was really nice seeing the actual folks who were, there. You could chat with them, look at the work, and more often than not, it was an easy sale for me to say, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll pick up your Kickstarter here, especially if I don't need foot for the shipping." And so you'll be seeing a lot of the kind of stuff hit the database, coming up in the next week or so. All right, so let me see what else is going on, and then we will push on. Oh, what else? Sorry for Charlotte notes. Talked about that. Dibba-dibba-dibba-doo. Oh, so things that were funny I did not expect. Minimal cosplaying. I mean, like shockingly so. There were, I don't know, 2-3% of the people going through the door, I'd say, had any kind of costume going on, as opposed to it's San Diego, especially because people there for the show, well, for the show is in the scene as much as anything. I'd say the number of cosplayers probably is almost 20%. Um, and the the costumes you'll see at San Diego are like next level. I mean, by far. This one is like, it would tend to be like someone's kid dresses up as Spider-Man, or and I'm going to make the prediction now. It's going to be the official lazy costume of 2023 is going to be any girl who has a hoodie is going to be Spider-Gwen, because apparently all you got to do is wear a white hoodie, draw a spider on it, and put the hoodie up, and you're Spider-Gwen. That's all it takes. But yeah, I saw several of those. But other than that, very, very little in terms of the actual scene. One or two more elaborate costumes, but good efforts on things. But man, nothing like the absolute Hollywood level stuff you're used to seeing over at San Diego. So anyway, take that for what it's worth. But good hang time. It was a nice level of activity for everyone, where you can actually sit and chat with people for lengths of time, and have good conversations. Got a chance to chat with Rich Vinson, shout out from over at Collection Drawer Company, and several other folks over there. But yeah, it was great seeing people. And by the way, also ran to a couple of folks on the live stream here, and thank you for stopping and saying hi. It was a pleasure to meet you both, meet you all. So thank you. Okay, let's move on. Let me do a quick check of the chat, and then let's answer some questions. All right, let's see here. Doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. KH Bruns says, when I was in the airline industry, we used U.S. Airlines training facilities in Charlotte. Absolutely love the city. Yeah, it's a neat town. Let's see. He says it's in St. Louis. Wizard World killed conventions there. Fan Expo did for 1 year, pulled out this year. Almost no comics and mostly Funko dealers. The last one. Yeah, I feel you. I gotta say, the last Wizard World I wound up doing it was the remains of the Chicago Comic Con, and where Wizard had taken over. And we thought we had a really prime location. We were like dead center in the middle of the show floor, except they put us across from the wrestling rink. You say, I'm sorry, pardon me, wrestling rink? Yeah, there was a wrestling rink where you'd be sitting there in the middle of talking about comic software. And it's like, yeah, it's really, good software. You have 3 different versions. This one over here has, blah, 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 and then you move up to the archive, you get all the pictures and everything. And then suddenly, go-thump, some 300-pound guy gets body slammed onto the ground, and, all the screaming, and you couldn't hear another word until they were done with their thing. Most annoying show. Well, second most annoying show I've ever done. The most annoying show still goes to Wizard World Los Angeles. So thank you, Wizard World. You've got both records. Just yeah, I'm not talking about Los Angeles without many beers in my hands. But okay, so but yeah, like I said, it was nice being at an actual comic show. There really is an energy to actual comic shows it's hard to meet any other place. And being able to just kind of see the world's comics out there, browse through, find deals, chat with people who like the same sorts of things you like, see things in person you haven't seen before. It's just fun. I forgot how much fun it is just going out there and just meeting people, and just chatting, just with people who like the same kind of stuff you like. And so yeah, it was a good time. Oh, and by the way, the panels, good selection of panels on everything. One of the grimmer ones, unfortunately, on Sunday, which I had to attend for reasons, was a couple of former professors were talking, ran a panel called "Pretend You're Dead," where they're talking essentially about estate planning for comic collections, which had some relevance to the other further business I had to do on the trip. But it's funny because they were good panels, but the numbers that were in everything is so much less than I'm used to seeing at San Diego. It kind of reminds me of the earlier days of San Diego when like you could actually, just show up a few minutes early and Stan Lee would be setting up there and trying to futz around with the projector and be like, "Oh, here, try hitting F8," and the whole panel would only have 30 guys in it. But it was kind of the same thing. It was not like San Diego in the later days when suddenly you're in these vast hall age things with 3,000 screaming people. But yeah, it was a good time. Okay, moving on. All right. So first question that I had people send it, and by the way, we're going to try the new one over here. This is a new video setup for computery type things. There it is. Okay, I think we're in good shape on that one. And the first question people had, uh, not asked so much as tech supported in, which is basically questions on how do you get this whole thing set up to be viewed the way I want, right? And the way I want is a somewhat ambiguous and fluid concept, but let's go through some of the talk about how you would set Comic Base up to kind of have the things you want to see, not so much the things you don't want to see, and take on the general role of what this person would be looking for. So if you're watching, this one's for you. Um, so the first question was, I think initially, as I read the communication on this one was like, "Hey, I don't want to see so much information. How do I cut it down so I'm just looking at the pictures like I would, what I'm used to?" And I believe what that person was largely thinking of is getting out of this grid view altogether. So there's two major views in ComicBase. There's a grid view, which is what you're looking at now. Basically, if you've used Excel or something like it, this ought to be very familiar to you. And then there's a thing called album view. And you can switch between those two using the view menu right up here in this first toolbar, and just go switch from view to album. And this one here, at this point, now we're just looking at pictures of the individual comics, done as just like got it, don't got it, and the raw basic information on them. So, much less to take in. And one nice thing about it is, as you got things, you can also set them so that. Sorry, I'm gonna. Let's see. I'm gonna highlight a couple of these ones here. Mark these as being in stock. All right. And one thing you'll notice is that as you're going through these ones, you can set them so they automatically differentiate themselves so you can very easily tell which ones you've got and don't have. There are different things you can choose when you're doing that to say things like in the album view, do you want to highlight the owned items? Do you want to darken the unowned items? Do you want to fade back the covers of the ones you don't have and so forth? Play around with these three pictures until you find a style you like is probably the best advice I can give you. That if you prefer this style of viewing, and yeah, it's a quick way of just looking over the tile and seeing what you've got. Now, next question that often comes up is that, well, okay, you're showing all the variants and things like that, but I don't really collect variants. Is there some way I can hide those? And of course there is. So let's go back under the view menu again, and under items to show. So the default is going to be, here's all the items of a title, right? Well, you also can say, show me just the ones I own, or just show me the owned ones plus the regular issues. Now, if you're not going to show, if the thing you're trying to get to is, just show me my collection and all the regular issues, then this is the one you want. So for Batman and Robin, yeah, there's like 30 variants for the whole thing. And here's, just the regular edition guys on there. If you have marked it as being in stock, it's going to show you that as well, because I figure you do want to see your collection. But another option you've got over here is just show me things I own. Just I don't want to see anything but my collection. In which case, if you flip this down to only show owned items, then okay, there you go. And this is pretty much the best approximation of some of the lower end hobbyist programs that are out there on the market, is where you just kind of create a big list of stuff you've got, and then you can page through them like this, and then you're just looking at just pictures of the comics in your collection. Now, with that said, and as a comfort level, if nothing else, I mean, there is a reason people build in that view. It is a nice pictorial view of your collection that is useful on some level. But as a practical level, I'm going to say the overwhelmingly popular choice for people when they're doing a collection is to view things in grid mode, which is like this. And I'm also going to say, unless if it were me, I would say items to show, leave it at all. I mean, all maybe own plus regular if you're really anti-variant, but I would typically leave it all. And here's the reason why. On one hand, you sit there and say, well, wait, I'm showing a lot of stuff that it's not my collection. Why do I care, etc. Because mostly when you're navigating around the database, it's because you want to take things that weren't in your collection and put them in your collection. So it's okay. Yeah, I just got a copy of issue number 5, highlight it, hit number 1. Here's number 9. Just I got a copy of that one, and 8A. So, and what I'm doing here is I'm just highlighting the issue by clicking at the extreme left here. So I'm highlighting the whole row, and then the set that I've got in stock, I'm using a quick shortcut over here where you can, with the whole, if the whole issue is highlighted like this by highlighting in the extreme left, this far left-hand column, if you type any number between 0 and 9, it'll say I have that many issues of. So let's say I have 5 copies of number 8. I can just type a 5 in, and then you see over here in the quantity column. Oh, I didn't hook up the magnifier. Just give me just a second. Let's see if I can get this rolling, because that'd be cool if I did. And there we go. Cool. Let me hide it so it's not in the way. Okay. So now we can say, all right, so here's, now I have 5 copies of issue number 8. And the way, once again, the way I got there is I just highlighted one or more lines over in the far left here. I tapped a number on my keypad between 0 and 9. If I want to clear them all out, I'm just going to punch a 0. So they all went to 0 right over there. And if I want to say I have 1 copy, just punch a 1, done and done. And they also give you, they highlight in a different color. It depends on the theme. In this case, it highlights in kind of a blue because I'm in sort of a blue theme. To also just give you another quick visual indicator of which of the issues you've got. That, I'm going to say, overwhelmingly is the way that most people will use the program as they navigate around it. Because when you're entering your books, you're, like I say, you're mostly going between titles you don't have and adding them to your stock. You're putting things into stock. So even though it's tempting to say, hey, just show me the things I have. So like say view items to show, just show me the things I own. You can do that, and so, yes, here's a list of all the Batman and Robins I've got in my inventory, but, the question then comes out, well, what am I trying to do with that list? I mean, and if the answer is I wanna add to that list, well, then the easiest thing to do really is start by showing all the items and then go back and add things to it, and then typically, once you've kind of established the baseline of, "Yeah, I get it, it's keeping track of my stuff," more frequently when you actually want to see the items in your collection, you start that question by saying, well, what is I'm trying to do with that list? Do I just want to see a big list, or do I want to see like what's it all worth? Do I want to see a checklist? Do I want to see you start with what you're trying to get for, and then ComicBase gives you a number of different ways of doing all those things. If I just want to see a big list of comics in my collection, you could say find my comics, and it's going to give you a big list of items in your collection. That's, it's so, once you've done it and you're convinced that ComicBase is holding on to your data, though, I gotta say, even though we make that easy to get to, it's easily the most useless way of seeing your books for most people. What most people want to do with their collection, usually, I'm gonna say the number one thing that that people want is they want to say, well, what's it all worth? And this one's a little odd. I'm gonna say it will make sense after I show it to you why it is where it is, but it's not where I think a lot of people would expect it to be, which is to say, if I just wanna know what my collection's worth, that's actually not under the report menu. It's actually under the file menu, go to collection statistics. Because what that function does is it says, hey, for this particular database, so you're actually talking about the file itself, the database file, it'll tell you lots of stuff, including in the big number over here, what's the whole thing worth. In this case, I just pulled over a database and added a few books to it just now, and while you guys were watching, $38.75. Its current value is this. If I'd put in costs, it would tell you what the cost breakdowns were, the markups, the asking price, and so forth. You could then drill down into this one by publisher, by item type, whatever else, and get all sorts of data, as well as bounce over here under database info and see lots of other futsy data about the database itself. How big it takes on disk, whether it's set to US dollar currencies or Canadian or whatever. But all this kind of futsy stuff about the file. It just happens to be that the big, most easily visible number with all this data, about the database file is it just is the answer to most people's most pressing question, which is, well, what's my collection worth? $38.75 at the moment. If I want to see other things about my collection, about how much, let's say, more of a broken down list of all the items in my collection with notes and things like that, or I want to do a checklist of things I'm missing and so forth. All those things are typically under the report menu, and I would encourage you, if you're starting out new especially, play around with especially the collection overview, which is a very tight report of your collection, and the collection report is where most people's first thing are. But there's a lot of neat reports in here. Check them out, and they'll tell you neat things about your collection worth looking at. But that is the basics on that. And then finally, I want to say one other thing, because I'm kind of giving a demo of the basics of ComicBase in here. I slipped this in. And thank you to everyone who knows how to use ComicBase, who's still holding on. But hopefully there's some things in here that hadn't been completely obvious. Even in the grid view, even when I say I want to show all the books, maybe I don't want to see all this stuff. Maybe I don't care about colorists, and of course, Alex Sinclair, I'm sorry, man. It happens, but it's but one thing that you should definitely do, and I would strongly suggest, the second you get ComicBase, have a look here before you even get serious with the program. Go under Setup, go under Columns to View, and look at the list down here. Now, there's a number of settings. The standard one over here is all your basic settings here. I think it's very close to what we're looking at right now. But you can sit there and say, look, of all these ones that's showing, it's like, like, let's say I don't care about colorist. Well, lose it, uncheck it. Let's say I don't care about cover inkers. I don't care about editors, inkers, and so forth. But then, and conversely, let's say there are things you do care about, which you're not seeing on there. Like, let's say you use some of the custom fields to indicate things like what box you put things in which case, go ahead and, mark, the custom field and move it up or down in the list so that you can see it next to a way that's convenient for you. Maybe you care about the diamond order code, maybe you don't, and so forth. But check off the items that are important to you. And then when you exit this dialog here, you'll notice that it actually cleans up the view here, and it gets rid of the things you didn't want. So we're no longer showing editor. We've got more room to show other things that I did care about, and then fine tune it a little bit. So for instance, let's say I want to use more room for the item description. If you go up here right at the top of the grid here, and if you notice my mouse, as I get close to this edge piece right here, that vertical line, it switches to a kind of arrows back and forth. You can grab that divider line and drag it right and left, and it will resize those columns. It'll remember it once it's been resized, so that you can sort of set these up the way you like them. It's going to have sort of like defaults when you start, but like, let's say I've the price column is ready for a value. You see how wide this is? It's ready for a value that goes into the millions. Let's say my collection isn't that valuable. All right, let's size up so it doesn't have quite as much space. Same thing goes for the cost. You can squish some of these things a little bit more than you want. The currency field. If you remember what the funny is, the longest thing about that field is the name currency. The cover, so forth. But you can customize this a fair amount. You can change the order of these, but set it up the way you like it so it's most effective for you. I will say the most popular view for people, even though the prettiest view is probably album view, like like this. I'm going to say the most popular view for most people most of the time is the grid view, because it's just so darn functional. It's easy to select a lot of different things. It's easy to get to the quick change commands to make changes of things. It's very, very flexible about what you show and don't show, whereas the album view has to necessarily stick to just the basics of I've got it, I don't have it, what condition it's in, and how many you have. So anyway, that is how I would start, by getting the thing set up to when you're going. And let's see here. Brian Price says, when I'm setting up, oh, there we go, work. So when you're setting up the columns, it'd be cool if you could save a custom view setup. We do, sort of. I mean, basically what it does is it remembers anything you've done. So, so for instance, with my current view here, I've gotten rid of the editor column. I've gotten rid of other things like that. So when I go here and I go back to columns to view, you'll notice that what it's set to, the preset is now current settings. So it just automatically made what I did that's different into my current settings, different than the standard plus custom fields or the data entry, which, by the way, if you want to play with those too, it exposes and doesn't expose certain presets of combinations of fields. We don't have the ability to, save multiple templates of setups. I'm not sure why you'd want to, but if you, with all these feature request type things, if you can come up with a really compelling reason why you need multiple setups for a given collectible, then I'm all ears. I'm certainly, consider it. And by the way, also I should note that when you're in the columns to view over here, it's specific to the items that you're talking about. So for instance, there's a different set over here for comics than there is for the books and the magazines and the newspapers. They each can have their own complete, custom setups that are show or don't show the fields that are interesting to those particular collectibles, and they'll remember them, throughout the database as you go. And they're also unique to each database. So if I have one database that, so for instance, is all the books I'm selling, I might want to show different fields like, how much, when I sold it or how much I got for it or things like that. I might want to show those, and they might not be interesting to me if I'm just talking about my regular database. So that's why these are unique to each database. All right. Hopefully I haven't beaten that one too far to death, but thank you for that one. And let me switch my keyboard back so I can get back to the chat and see how we're doing here. Okay, looks like that was the end of that question. So let me push on with the next one that people sent in. Getting updates. All right, I gotta admit, this one blew my mind a little bit. It was a good customer. He'd been using the program for years, and he's like, "Okay, yeah, it's time for me to update." And because I'm looking forward to seeing the new values. I'm like, Okay, I mean, again, thank you for your custom. Very much appreciate you. But you don't need to update the program. I mean, in this case, it sounds like he hadn't updated for a year, as in like he hadn't updated his values for a year and was looking forward to doing that. That hasn't been the way we work the program for a while. I mean, in fairness, I think the guy's such an old good customer. I think he actually dates back from the era when it did used to work like that. When we started, so ComicBase is now, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary. When we started, ComicBase 1.0 through effectively version 13.0. It's 10.0 was the version number, but there's reasons, mostly me being an idiot about marketing for the first, for the first several years. Instead of going 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, I would count 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Oh no, we changed the underlying database format. Oh, that means that officially this is a 2.0 release. Yeah, seriously, engineers think like this. Marketing people, they need to slap you silly when you think like that because it's terrible for selling things. Anyway, we eventually got, our heads slapped up sideways, enough that we actually learned how to count with whole numbers. But and nowadays we largely count with year numbers. So that, and by happy coincidence, it turns out that ComicBase 23.0 from a version standpoint is also ComicBase 2023. So now when you say ComicBase 23, doesn't matter whether you're talking about the year or the version, they're both the same, which honestly, I'm so happy about that. I'm going to try to keep this thing on a strict year release schedule as long as we possibly can, because you can't believe how much grief on the tech support phones it saves us. It's like back when we were doing, ComicBase, I think it was like ComicBase version 17, but it was during the year 2015. And people say, yeah, I got ComicBase 15. And we'd have to say, 15.0 or 2015, and then you'd waste like a minute as you confuse everyone on the phone. Anyway, that neither here nor there. But moving on. When ComicBase 10.0, so back in the day, ComicBase 1.0 through 9.0, we used to basically work with Comics Buyer's Guide in partnership, where once a year we would make this mighty effort in the spring to try to price all the books in the database, come up with the next year's price thing, and then we'd put that together with any program features that we'd rolled out, during the year, and then there'd be this massive release drop that would happen, and that'd be the next major version of ComicBase, and that's for the first 13 years of you doing the software. That was the only time you got new prices, is you got it once a year when you bought the new version. Since ComicBase 10.0, we said, wow, this is so not supportable, and there's this internet thing now that we can take advantage of. We're going to do something really crazy. We're going to try updating the database every single week. So as new books come out every single week, we're going to add them in. So that way you don't need to guess at the title and you won't be out of sync with what we've got. Well, mostly it changes it from, you use the database to find out how much your stuff is worth and then add in your new books as you go. It changed it from that to what it is today, whereas you kind of wait for us to update the database, which we try to do before most books even hit the street. And then you just basically say, okay, let me beep in my books. It'll looks them up automatically. You just add them in, just punch, yeah, got it, got it, got it. Or, just beep the next one with the barcode scanner if you have the pro or archive editions. And most people will never add a new comic book anymore. You basically just get it from the weekly update. Anyway, so we had gotten a call from a guy, though. Again, very, very happy for your custom. Thank you. I mean, very much. But, somehow he was still under the impression 17 years later, I think, that we only updated our prices once a year, which couldn't be further from the truth. No, we update. Well, we analyze something like 2.1 million data points every single week, and we will add new items. We'll add new pictures. If you have the archive edition, we'll add brand new pricing because we calculate a rolling market average of all those 2.1 million items every single week. And the way you get those, and I feel like I'm bearing the lead, but I'm saying something which I hope is really old news to most everyone here. The way you get those updates is if you have a current version of ComicBase, it comes with a year-long, we call it an update subscription, which covers both the program, the content and the prices, and new changes to the program as well. But as long as that's enforced, and when you buy ComicBase, like if you bought it today on June 21st, it'd be good until June 21st of next year. Then for 50 weeks out of the year. We don't do one at Christmas or New Year's, but that's pretty much the only time we don't. Um, you just come up here under Internet, say check for updates, and it will tell you if there's a new content update. If there is, and let me go ahead and force it here because I just downloaded that update, but I'll show what it looks like. Um, if there is, it's going to give you a thing saying, well, okay, here's the update options. What things did you want to update? I'd say if you don't know any better, go ahead and just leave them at the defaults. In general, I would definitely suggest to people, unless you do your own pricing, and for whatever reason you're a comic store, you just have very firm ideas on pricing, whatever else. Go ahead and let it both update the items with the current guide values and also update the selling prices to match the current guide values. Good idea in general. Good idea in general. Again, in general, allow us to make corrections to any of your cover dates, cover prices, series info and descriptions, creator credits. Basically, check all these because we're adding new information all the time. I was mentioning this week we're actually going to be changing about 2 million items to standardized creator names. So Jose Marzan Jr. The accent over the second A in Marzan, will be there all the time, not just sometimes, because he would sign it that way sometimes and not others. Um, but all that stuff is going to be coming out this week. Generally, I would not suggest to lock the item notes. If you do that, it'll say, all right, fine, leave my notes alone. I'm never going to add anything to it. If you have the archive edition, it allows you to download new pictures from new releases. At the bottom here, I would definitely suggest check these first two. Remove obsolete series if they have no items in stock, and remove obsolete items if they're not listed as being in stock. All right. This bears a little bit of note because I'd say these are very important options, but we actually added this whole quick start thing to kind of school people up a little bit on that one to basically convince you to check these. But if you hadn't done that, if you're getting older preferences that you're carrying over, these won't necessarily be checked by default. Why would you want to remove obsolete series? Well, what it comes down to is, let's say DC solicits a brand new series, Night Quest, the fall of Robin, whatever the whole thing is, and so we say, okay, great, in 3 months, Night Quest, the fall of Robin's coming out, and looks like issues number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the thing is, we will have added that to the database. Let's say that then DC changes their mind, and when Night Quest, the fall of Robin actually hits, it's just called Robin, and it turns out it's the 6th series or whatever it is. At which point, Night Quest: The Fall of Robin is now an obsolete series. It'll never have active issues in it. You shouldn't add issues to it. There will also be a second series, which looks exactly like it, called Robin, 6th series, and that'll be the real one. And you really want to let us get rid of the bogus one that was there. That for some reason we had to retitle it. Sometimes there was a title that comes out. Walking Dead's one. Back in the early '90s, Walking Dead was just it was a title from I want to say Adventure Comics about zombies, and then Image came up with another series called The Walking Dead, and then also became very, very clear that Image's Walking Dead was far, far more popular than the original one. And so we actually had to go back and retitle Walking Dead to be Walking Dead parenthesis. I think I want to say Adventure. Tell me if I'm wrong on that one. And then Walking Dead from Image was then Walking Dead parenthesis Image. Every once in a while, we do actually have to do moves like that. Not often, but it does happen. So you do want to let us remove those obsolete series, and secondarily, you also want to allow us to remove obsolete issues. So if they announce a new variant cover and then it turns out they never wind up shipping it, let us take that issue out. Now we aren't going to take it out if you had any inventory associated with it. So if you sat that there and said, "Well, no, I've got a copy of the B variant," and then it turns out that they didn't publish the B variant, so maybe it was a mistake or miscommunication about what constitutes the B variant. Don't know, but or maybe you've got a completely you went to the Charlotte Comic Con where only people who attended a particular panel at the Charlotte Comic Con got given the B variant of Meet the Kickstarters number 1B. If so, we don't have it, right? But you have it, in which case we're not going to take it out of your inventory. That would screw up your inventory. So I mean, it could be legit, in which case, in those cases, if it turns out that we don't have it in our master database, it'll get listed after you're done with the update as saying, "Hey, we didn't actually recognize this issue." In which case, if you know it's legitimate, highlight that issue, right click on it, submit it as a new or corrected item, and you get points. And that'll get you toward the leaderboard, and then potentially, if you do it a lot, you get bragging rights, and that's a really good thing, right? Anyway, but it helps everyone because there's always going to be new weird things that we will have never seen, no matter how many comic shows we go to, no matter how many small press guys we talk to, no matter how many weird things. Like, I mean, let's face it, if you were the one guy other than me who bought Ode to Bucky's, you've got the other copy of that mini comic that exists. So if you had it and I hadn't, please add that to your database, submit as a new issue, and then it will get added to the main. So that's another thing. Okay. That was a long digression. I'm trying to hit as many points of these as I possibly can, but like I say, trying to drop some new info even for the people who know a lot of the basics on here. But yeah, I gotta say I was surprised. It's sort of like, wow, no, we do a lot more updating than just the one. So by all means, check for updates, download the most recent price update, and that's a good thing. We even have a program, by the way, called Sidekick, which runs in the background. Let me go ahead and show you that one here. So if you go down to the bottom of your computer, down here, right there, let me switch to that one right here. So if you go down, here, I'll back it up so you can see, right down by where the clock is down here, if you look over here, typically, and it looks like I don't have it running at the moment, so let me go ahead and kick it off. This is a little companion program to ComicBase, which runs at startup time. What he looks like is typically he looks like a little superhero guy right over here. That's called Sidekick. And what Sidekick's job is to do is all the boring stuff that isn't that much fun, but really needs to get done. And in particular, he does things like backing up your database, downloading updates, saving your stuff to the cloud, so forth. Anyway, not that much fun to do, but very useful to do. So he's trying to run like the elf and the shoemaker, in the middle of the night when ComicBase is closed down and take care of all that stuff for you. If you had closed down ComicBase during the day, and if you'd run the quick startup that had happened, you would have found out, if you just leave your machine on, that Sidekick by default is going to automatically update your prices for you once a week. You don't even need to remember to do it because there's a schedule that comes with Sidekick. And the default schedule is to do stuff. I mean, typically it's like at like 2 in the morning, but it depends on when you install ComicBase. But by default, it'll check for updates once a day. There's actually going to be an update once a week. if you like selling on Atomic Avenue, you can enable the schedule to automatically check and post sales. You can have it saved to the cloud once a week and have it compact the database and so forth. And it will just take care of that stuff. Just all you got to do is leave your machine on, but also make sure you close ComicBase, and it would also make sure your database keeps updated. All right. So that's enough of a digression on that one here. All right, let me see what's going on here. Doop, 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 doo. Fred asks, now we need to get some database people to slap your engineer and marketing people. Yeah, I guess so. No, clearly, there's never enough abuse in the ranks when you're talking to programmers. All right, Greg says, remember, if you get enough points, you can earn a new car. No, yeah. No, it's not a thing. What you can do is there's a special badge you can get. There's two of them actually you can get for submitting corrections. I'm gonna say I think there are three. There's one you get just for submitting your first correction. You get one if you make the top 200, which is to say you appear on the main leaderboards of the ComicBase.com. And there's another one you get. Oh no, I'm gonna take that back. There are 4 badges you can get. There's one you get if you crack the top 10. And there is a very, very rare badge. It's called the Commander Shepard Award, which is named after Barry Shepard, who was the first, and I thought at the time, the only guy who was ever going to win this badge, which is if you have 1,000,000 submission points, which is you get a submission point for submitting either a correction, and you get another one if you submit a picture we don't have. And Barry Shepard, God bless you, man. Baz, if you're watching, Mazel Tov, man. Anyway, we did that badge just for him, and since then I believe the most recent guy to have earned that one was Rob Weinberg. But yes, it's I believe it's 1,000,000 corrections you need. It might be 200,000. I think I'm getting that wrong. I think it's 200,000. I think Andre's screwing with my head right now because Andre blew the doors off that one so thoroughly that I don't know if we're going to need an Andre badge, but we'll see. All right. Let's see here. What else is going on? And now we're talking about ComicBase Hot Wheels cars. All right. Ed says, hey, Pete, talking about points, you remind us what the badges are again. Any thoughts on adding new badges? Yeah, let's do a badge show at some point where we kind of go through them. And yes, I have thought about adding new badges and not just a more elaborate, berry badge. Yes, and Andre agrees. Yes, there should be one for me as well. No, we've thought about things like that. It's something we did just for fun, because it's just, on one hand, we want to encourage people to explore the program, learn some of the cool things it does, but it feels good when you do neat things and get recognized for it. So, no, we'll talk more about that. That honestly, it's a good topic for like a ComicBase After Dark, or if we can manage to get a user group meeting together in real life. I think it's too late to get one set up for San Diego this year. I'm pretty sure it is, actually. But if we can get something like that going, it's another good topic I'd love to see is like, what things would you like to see get recognized in the badges? I mean, we're not going to add 1,000,000 of them, but yeah, we've had the same ones around for a while, and I wouldn't mind adding some new ones. And there's one secret badge that I'm not sure if anyone's ever won it. I'm not even gonna tell you what it's about for right now. But we'll talk about some of that stuff. Okay. Yes. And for instance, badges. We need more stinking badges. All right, excellent. All right. So, last thing I promised for, and I try to at least respect the things I put into the description. I'm going to quick run through 2 other tips that people have asked about. One, clearing old sales. If you are one of the people you're checking for sales and purchases from Atomic Avenue and it says you've got old new records, you want to add them, and you say yes, go ahead and add them, and then you check again and it still says, yeah, I haven't added them yet. It could be that you're one of the people who were leftovers where when we scavenged, basically when we re-instrumented all of Atomic Avenue to basically be willing to cough up their entire sales history since time began with the new sales APIs that we introduced last year. There are some things that just the data was not there. So we might know that the sale was made by you, but we didn't know what database it was sold out of. In which case, the answer to everything, you can write support@comicbase.com and let us know what you would like done with that data. So we can, our choices are basically, you can tell us just mark it as processed already. It's like you just don't want to see the note anymore. We can do that. or you can tell us what database ID you're using right now and tell us that you want it deducted from the inventory in that database, or at least reflected as having been sold from the database of the inventory of that database. The way you would find your database ID. What the hell is a database ID, Bickford, you say? So when you're sending stuff up to the server, right? So in other words, it's not just on your, Coinbase lives on your machine, but when you do certain things, we need to know what database you're talking about. Because if you had 5 copies of the same database on your scattered on different folders in your machine, we don't know which one you're talking about. We can't see your machine. So what we do is we give every database in, whenever you say file new database, it gets a unique number associated with it that allows us to tell that, the one you're calling Bob's database, or the one you're calling Carl's database, or Fred's database, or just my database 2023, we can tell that one is distinct, as we see it on the back end. The way you would find that is go into the file menu to that collection statistics again. And this is one of those additional pieces of information that we were talking about that this will do for you. Come over here and click that database info icon, and this bizarrely long number right here is your database ID. And so anyway, that's the one that allows our servers to uniquely identify that database when we see it again. And we will know it's that database even if you store it in a different folder, if you put it on a backup drive, if you do whatever else. Whenever we see that database, even under a different name, we'll know that that's the data you're talking about. Anyway, if you want us to roll old data out, if you're getting a message and it doesn't seem to go away on you, write to support@comicbase.com and say, hey, I want this done with the data. Like, I want it processed across against a particular database, or I don't, or whatever you want. But if you want it processed against a particular database, copy this number right here, because that is the idea of your database. By the way, yours will not be this number. It'll be another preposterously long number on your computer. And tell us what you want done with it, and then we will make that happen on the back end. All right. Let me see here. Okay. And let's see. Oh, wow, lots of questions here. Okay, so uh, something the Badgers. Okay, all right, moving on. Okay, Commando just hit 5566 this week. Oh, that's kind of cool. Commando's a really long-running British title. I can't believe that thing is still running. Decent art. It's really cool. And by the way, if you're over in England, really hard to find. It's one of these comics that it doesn't get a lot of love in comic shops, and you have to find it in things like, I mean, you don't like, I've seen it a couple times in train stations, but you find them in, like, Boots the Chemist. It's a weird title. It's digest sized, and they come up with like 3 or 4 per week, telling different stories throughout British and international war. Basically, it's a war comic, but the decent art, decent stories, and man, oh man, oh man, that thing's been running, and they've been really publishing them. All right, our mom wants to remind everyone as we close through the hour mark, please, there are some PSAs. Number one, hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget they have a dedicated message board so you can give us topics so we know what to talk about on the next live stream. And also, in this, another PSA on the ComicBase message boards is a thread where you can get the torrent file for downloading Andre's ComicBase cover catalog. So Andre has done something absolutely mad, which is, if you had an urge to print out all the comic covers that are in ComicBase, granted it's somewhat small size, but to do that, much the way that like the Gerber price, the photojournal guides of comics, would be back in the day. They would be these ginormous, lovely books. They'd cost about $100, and they'd print like 15,000 comic covers per book. You can print, I believe, we're at 965,000 comic covers in ComicBase right now. And if you want to blow through several reams of paper and lots of toner, you could actually print that out, or do something somewhat more sensible and save as a PDF. But that's a thing. And Andre put that together, and there's a torrent for downloading that. And so anyway, that's pretty cool. All right, let's see here. I think that's largely it. I want to give you one last bit of stuff because I advertised it in the promo for the show, and so I'd like to at least give some basic tips on this one. That is, guy had asked me, is like, "Hey Pete, you're going to shows again more. Can you share some tips for surviving Comic Con?" And this is more relevant than you'd ever believe. I mean, there are people in the world who go to a show like, Heroes Con, or they're just their local comic, show, and they say, "Well, yeah, I went to Comic Con." And I said, "Wow, you went to Comic Con? You went to San Diego?" "No, no, no, I went to the one at, the LeBaron Hotel in, or, I was like, "No, no, that is a Comic Con. That is not Comic Con." The difference is almost as stark of going to a regular comic show and going to Comic-Con is, like, if you're ever, like, in Las Vegas and you go to a bar and they've got, like, the slot ma not the slot machines, but, like, the blackjack, the automated blackjack, games right at, at your table, so as you're bored and you're waiting for your beer, you can waste a few extra bucks, playing, mechanical blackjack. Um, yeah, it's like that's the difference between that and the Strip. Is like the difference between, between regular Comic Cons and Comic Con. If you're gonna say Comic Con, you better be talking about either San Diego or maybe the New York Comic Convention, or there's a couple of international ones that are of the same scale. I've never been to the one in France, but it's they are ridiculously large. I believe the last attendance figures when the thing was going well before COVID, I mean, they'd draw 250,000 people to this thing. It would be one of those things where you'd have to enter into a very, very fierce lottery to get tickets. It was, it cost tremendous amounts of money, just so many people again, and it just takes over the entire town in a way you can't believe. I mean, it's like all the hotels for 30 miles around would get sold out for Comic Con for an entire week. The show floor itself, they doubled the size of the convention space for San Diego, and then it immediately filled the other, half that they doubled and then spilled out to other buildings. So just fantastically large amounts of stuff, and then you have, massive, massive lines in, to go to Hall H is the infamous one. There are people who have T-shirts like, I waited a day and a half in the line at Hall H, and all I got is the stinking T-shirt. But that's when you want to go see the Hollywood guys. They'll introduce new series. They'll have the stars of new movies. Will be, talking to people, and so forth. And so it's quite the production. So number one, tip I'd say is number one, Comic Con is a marathon, not a sprint. If you think about moving fast, I know it's exciting. It really, really is. It's amazing the energy down there, but plan for the long haul on this one. Don't wear yourself ragged on day one, or you'll just be a basket case, going forward. Do plan for the week. If you're going to plan for the week, try like hell to get a badge for all 5 days. Well, five. Yeah, it's at least 5 days. Typically, there's a preview night on Wednesday, which if you can get in is awesome. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then everything winds down. And in the meantime, it will have erected basically a city within a city to make the whole thing happen. And then everyone, limps back home, much poorer for the whole experience, but full of memories and and sore and aching feet. Um, but yes, plan on, I mean, pace yourself is probably the number one thing I'd say. If there are things you must see, mark them down on your schedule ahead of time and tag team with other people to make sure that you've got your tickets lined up, that you've got someone waiting in the appropriate line to get there. Uh, every story they've told you about how long the lines on are for some of these panels, every one of them is true. And the mere fact that you say that like Hall H holds, I don't know, some crazy number of people, so like 5,000 people or something like that. You say, well, 5,000 people caught this unpopular show right before mine. I'll just wait. As soon as that show's in session, I'll just get in line. And I'll catch the next session. Be aware that if people want to catch a particularly big show, they will basically set their butt in the seat, and because they don't clear the hall between shows. So let's say you're a big Supernatural fan, And so they're gonna have, all the team for Supernatural or some brand new show is gonna be, showing up and doing a demo at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There'll be people who wait in line at 8 a.m. and sit through a whole day's worth of panels they really didn't wanna watch, so that they were there with the front row tickets, for when Supernatural rolls up. That's a thing that happens, and there's a couple of large holes in San Diego that work like that. So just be ready for it, and be ready to endure. I mean, it's like waiting for concert tickets in the days before the internet, in terms of like camping out and stuff like that. So if especially if you want a really good seat, so be prepared to sweat it if you want those things, but mark your calendar well ahead of time. Work with friends to line wait with you so you can not have to go through the entire thing yourself. All this stuff is way more fun to do with friends than just do on your own. If you just do it on your own, you're just gonna be miserable. Um, but yeah, do that. Comfortable shoes cannot be overstated. I don't care how cool your costume is. I don't care how snazzy dressed you are in normal life. At a minimum, wear gel insoles. I was doing San Diego, not San Diego. I think I was at the NAB show, where I'm walking around was it Las Vegas, through a similarly sized type of convention, plus lots and lots of hard cement on the way to and the way back from the show to get there. And by the end of the first day, my dogs were absolutely barking. I mean, like I felt like a cripple. Blisters were working everywhere. It was just a mess. It was a professional show, so I'm dressed up and everything. And so I'm sitting in Starbucks the next morning, and I see a couple of guys, clearly detectives, um, walking up to the register. I let them get their coffee, and I say, "Excuse me, guys, you don't mind me asking everything? 'Cause you have to wear good shoes now, just on your job, and I'm sure you're on your feet all day long. How do you cope with this? Because I'm dying here. I mean, I'm about ready to wrap my feet in gauze." And basically, one guy just looks at me and goes, gel insoles. It's like gel insoles, gel insoles. You know, directed me over to the nearest Walmart. We get a little thing. It's like a Dr. Scholl's gels thing out there. You cut it to your shoe size, stick it in your shoe. Oh dear Lord, I can't tell you, kids. It's night and day. It's like the difference between walking on carpet all day long and walking on cement all day long. It's Your feet will thank you. If your feet don't have it built into your shoes, gel insoles. Anyway, drink plenty of water. Try to avoid the con food. The con food is not great. The Everything is super expensive. It's kind of, well, it's not nasty, but it's not great either. If you can go out of I mean, the gas lamp has a bunch of really cool things, but if you've got any tolerance for walking, and let's face it, if you don't have a tolerance for walking, I don't know if you're ready for Comic Con. Walk several blocks out of the gas lamp up the street, and at that point, you'll start finding some really good pizza joints, some really good bars, some things that aren't just blown out with people at the high times. And you'll still be in the middle of a party, but you'll actually be able to eat and have things like that. And honestly, it's really nice in the middle of the comic convention to go meet up with a friend, hang out, do something which isn't the show for a bit, because it's like a pressure cooker in there. I mean, it's fun. Don't get me wrong; it's really fun, but it's also really good to get out of the swing of it for a while. Um, if you want to attend any of the night events, and there are many, the Masquerade, very, very cool. There are film festivals that run through the entire thing. There's gaming festivals that run through the whole thing. I mean, you can't believe how much activity there is due. And that's in addition to every party, every special event, and everything else that other vendors are putting on. Get a hold of the schedule, get a calendar out, mark your time out there. And if you possibly can, give yourself at least one night off. Just to regroup at some point in during the whole thing. Because I mean, again, if you go just gonzo through the whole thing, you'll wipe yourself out and you'll just be a mess. And it's not nearly as much fun if you're just a mess. So, get some sleep. Rest up. Even I'm giving this advice. I don't care if you're 20 years old and you're just full of crazy teen vitality or whatever else. Pace yourself. It's a big, big show, but it is a really fun show. Take a lot of pictures, because there's nothing like it. So anyway, I'm looking forward to doing that, and I should be in there about 3 weeks, and I hope to see you all there. So anyway, that is my tips. Um, All right, and and Audrey says, "Yes, hey Pete, you should show the catalog on the stream just to give a peek to people." Absolutely, I will try to do that. Good one. All right, guys. Well, anyway, that is all I've got for now. Thank you everyone for showing up. We'll be doing something else next, different on the next one. Hopefully, we won't destroy the world in the meantime, like we did last week. So anyway, but that's about it, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you then. Bye bye.